Um, so this is the first recording, I guess, podcast while I'm painting. It's pretty cold out right now. Midday. November 15th, maybe? Around 10 a.m. The fifth level of the parking garage looking southwest towards Cambridge. About to set up a painting 12 by 24. I realize that there's no video to this, but I've been thinking about doing this for a long time, and I feel like I'm a person who wants it to be perfect every time, and if it's not perfect, then I'm not going to start. That being said, I'm just going to make a recording to record my thoughts here. There, just had to zip up my jacket. It's pretty cold out right now. I've been struggling basically with this idea of purpose, and I think most of us do, especially creators. Why do we create? Maybe that's too heavy a start-off point, but especially this morning tried to write another post for my website and just got shut down. I couldn't figure out what it was I was trying to say, and that's really the issues. It feels like that's constantly plaguing what I'm doing. Finding out a purpose on what it is, why it is, I should say, you're creating. Because I gotta be honest with you, I think what happens is eventually the joy of doing what you're doing really only goes so far. Sorry, I'm struggling to get this dang paint box open. It seems to be fused with paint, which kind of is not ideal. I sometimes wonder if I make things difficult on myself to sort of stop myself from focusing on why it is I'm doing the things that I'm doing, or what's the point of them, of doing it that way. Oh, this might not be opening at all anytime soon. Oh, I'm not going to tell you what paint box it is, because it's been pretty good so far, and I don't want to screw it. Okay, let's see here. Oh, okay. Perfect. And that's, in essence, what it is it feels like I'm doing. I just got distracted there and stopped worrying about the purpose and just started doing it. But back to subject versus object. I feel the way I've been working mostly, especially with making these paintings, these plein air paintings, or the bigger mock-up versions when I go back downstairs with my studies, is that I have I would almost say like a catchphrase, but that sounds a little too lighthearted. It seems more like a mantra of figuring out of just one line, whatever it is. And today, that one line is subject versus object. I've been struggling with that for a while. And people, if you're listening to this, first of all, thank you. And second of all, you might be wondering, well, why is that important in creating painting or painting itself? I'm struggling myself to put it into words, which is why I've kind of forgoed my original idea of making a video sort of the painting, and record myself speaking while the painting's going on, which seems to make sense, right? This is a visual medium I'm working in, but I've sort of forgoed all that, and decided just to do a voice recording and maybe give you a couple pictures on a slideshow of what I'm actually painting. So why is that important, subject versus object? Well, what I've come up with really is a subject is something that's... I looked it up online. The literal definition and sentence structure is subject is the doer of the action, as object is the receiver of the action, which really is a great definition. The only problem is when you're subject to painting, that you're painting is another person, or in our relationships to each other. It's dangerous, and that's the problem. It's dangerous in thinking that there is a subject and object are mutually exclusive, in the literal sense. We're all influencing and being influenced at the very same time. If you have any doubt of that, look at how many times you've been speaking and someone gives you a strange look and you've stopped dead in your tracks, verbally. So subject versus object. Subject versus object. Subject versus object. Subject versus object. Right now I'm looking out over the horizon. And I gotta say, it's cold but beautiful out here. I feel like I might be doing a lot of paintings up here, especially this winter. Oh yeah, so what I was talking about, subject versus object, why is that important in painting? What I boiled it down to, and I feel like I'm jumping ahead here without giving any basis, but subject is tied to the idea, that literal sense I was talking about, where the doer of the action. It's easy to feel like you're the subject painting, right? You're painting objects, especially a landscape. But I think what it is to me right now, as I'm standing up here, I definitely am feeling like the object, like I'm influenced. So I dip my brush right into the walnut oil here, right away. And immediately I'm struck by the horizon. And there's an interconnected, I almost want to seem like a lace, of trees that have lost the skeletons of trees, I guess, the branches over top of that sky. But immediately, I immediately feel like I am affected by this, that this is affecting me. And I think that's why it's important, why it sort of struck me. I woke up one night at around 2 or 3 and was just saying subject versus object, which in a movie is could be a very inspiring moment for the main character. But in reality, it seemed kind of funny. Um, but it's been sort of haunting me, and I realize it's because while I'm out here, yeah, I'm making paintings, but I'm actually listening and watching and learning. This is affecting me. What the data is working in through me, basically, that I'm seeing, and I think what I was trying to do, and when I was writing this down in the blog, was talk about a subject as something that's alive. And I thought, well, what is life? Is it movement? Is it breath? Is it flesh? Is it any of these things? And what it actually came down to was the subject is the data that I'm receiving. Huh. Isn't that interesting? I never thought that before. The subject is the data that I'm receiving. Is it? But what about... the subject is what it is that is affecting me in the visual data that I'm receiving. And I think this is going beyond abstract not abstract, representational or non-representational art, right? So representational means it's supposed to look like something. Non-representational is it looks like nothing. You're not trying to make it look like anything. And so it's the data I'm receiving. Sorry that this is, well, apologies, I mean, that this is scattered, but what's happening is as I'm painting, I'm sort of trying to keep a cohesiveness in this painting and make decisions in painting while also repeating this mantra, subject versus object, subject versus object. So it's in the data that I'm receiving. And so how does that hold true if it's, how does that hold true? The subject is the data that you're receiving. That's really the issue, is how do I verbally speak about this, where I feel like what's happening is I'm stuck trying to explain the difference between the viewer and the viewed. And that it's actually important because, especially as artists, Oh, for me, I don't know about others, but I mean, my goal is to dissolve the boundaries between us, and the very language that we're using is in the boundaries between us. No, wait, that makes no sense. Huh. Subject and object. When dealing with Painter, the subject is the viewer and the object is the viewed. And that's the original break between humanity and nature, really. Like, I guess that's my issue, is that the idea of a subject or the idea of an object denotes separation. And if you want to become immersed in what it is you're painting, and on a bigger scale, what the universe itself, then what? How can we think in those terms? Weird. And it's almost like my way of working around that is in making things difficult or having things be stuck, forcing my mind, the thinking part of my brain, to focus on a task that's beyond introspection. Working with a palette that's stuck, or dealing with this cold and trying to set up, trying to break down the scene into its simplest forms. And having that introspective sense dissolved dissolves the boundaries. I mean, does that... And the only way that I've been immersed is in that is in this is through that. Subject versus object. The only way is to become so immersed that the time of introspection just disappears. real issue is that when that happens, there's nothing for me to say. So if it's working on me, what is it? Allowing myself to be influenced? Allowing myself to be influenced by it. What? What could we actually... Okay, let's try this again. Subject, if you're still with me, God bless you. Subject versus object. Subject versus object. So the minute that you are a subject, that there's a subject versus object, you're outside of whatever it is you're looking at. The moment you're seeing subject versus object disappears. There is only one thing. It's cohesive. So dichotomy disappears the moment that subject and object disappears. In order to truly see as an artist, as a human being, there cannot be subject or object, because subject or object denotes division and devotes separation. And so this dichotomy is tied to our preconceived notions about the world and our opinions about the world, our fight or flight response, right? When you look out into the world, you take in this raw visual data You make judgments on it. It's beautiful, it's ugly, it's dangerous, it's safe. It's something I want to go after, something I want to repel. In that very nature, you is created. And that's where the separation exists. It's the first one. But really, when you think about it, it's the source of tribalism. You're looking for visual cues on what your tribe is. And that's an old way of thinking. It's been with us forever. I think that's the issue. That's why this feels so important. Is that we can't still depend upon visual cues and data to define what our tribe is. It's the source of racism. It's the very creation of race. I mean, and essentially there's only one race. And the only difference between that we have used to split up the human race is through visual cues. And so this idea of subject versus object and being something that's kept us safe and helped us through the thousands and thousands of years of our lives, collective lives, and it's actually begun to bind us. We're bound by this idea of subject versus object, of you versus everything else. And I mean, you don't have to say versus, that sounds combative. You could say you compared to everything else, really. You and everything else. And so in order to be introspective and to think about the data that you're after, you have to, in essence, separate yourself from that data. Which in fact means separating yourself from the world, from the subject. And the moment you separate yourself, it's the moment that we stop understanding it. So anytime I guess you feel separated, you're just clinging to subject and object. The amount of separation you feel in the world is in direct proportion to the way that you view it. I guess I always thought the important part of that statement was the way or the mechanism of feeling, but in actuality it's the you. And all of these things, and how I'm speaking is perpetuating this idea of dichotomy. Subject. Object. What is beyond that? Well, I hope this made sense to you. I mean, if it didn't, that's okay too. I'm definitely gonna talk about it some more, talk about it again. I'm gonna post this painting online on my Instagram or on the website. Right now I'm just sort of working on the underpainting, and it feels like that's kind of all I want to do, is have this deep quindichrome magenta underpainting be the painting itself. In its simplicity, it really is what has evoked, helped me understand. And that's the fucked up thing to me, is that I can't. The obstacles I faced this morning were so crazy. It's freezing. It's -11 right now. My stuff was in the basement, not packed up. I couldn't get into the car because the trunk. I couldn't get my stuff out of the trunk or load the stuff into the trunk because the lock was frozen. Christy was leaving soon to go to her dentist appointment, so I wanted to spend time with her, and it's cozy and I had things to do, but I was compelled to come out and paint. And this wasn't the original spot up in the top of the new parking garage at the end of Wilson Street. I was intending to go somewhere in the woods. Yeah, just compelled. And the messed up thing is that this is the most I've ever understood this subject versus object. In the last week I've been trying to figure this out. Really, that's kind of what's happening every time I do a study or I paint, is that if there is, it starts out where I'm the subject painting objects, so I'm influencing something, right? The subject is the person performing the or action, and the object is the one receiving, and very quickly it gets changed around. Or I am, in fact, having the action performed on me. Because whatever it is that I was seeing is really helped me understand. Well, I feel like I kind of got a good grasp on this, but I would definitely appreciate if somebody has an idea or something that is clear to you when I was speaking, to please reach out to me. I definitely all the help I can get in understanding this stuff. But I think this might be it for the painting, and my fingers are getting pretty dang cold. Probably time to head in soon. And hopefully in the next couple one of these I'll be a bit more clear, and there'll be some video of me painting while I'm speaking. But for now, good luck in your journey. Talk soon. Peace.